I'm so excited to be putting online my first webinar, Embodiment in Chinese Culture. In this video, I'm going to explain what embodiment is, why it's so essential in these very challenging times. I'm going to explain the connection between embodiment practices and traditional Chinese culture. And I'm going to take apart one Chinese character because it tells a beautiful story and it also sets the stage for the upcoming webinar. It's a very simple story, really. One morning I was on a video platform chatting in Chinese with a Chinese friend, and at one point I wanted to share my screen, except that I couldn't. For some reason the computer froze and the cursor got stuck on the screen, and I didn't even know how to say stuck in Chinese. So I asked my Chinese friend, is the character you would use to describe what happens to a cursor on a screen also be applicable to describe a person in a difficult situation? Someone who has lost his or her mobility? Maybe you've figured out where I'm going with this. In any case, my Chinese friend gave me the character kun, which I had learned was the first syllable in the word for difficulty. Now, kun is an ideogram made up of two keys. On the outside you have enclosure, and on the inside you have a pictogram for a tree. Difficulty, enclosure, tree. At first I couldn't quite see the connection, but then I saw the wisdom behind it. In other words, aren't human beings a lot like trees in the sense that we're both living and breathing organisms? You could also say that human beings, like trees, have their higher branches. In other words, this need to stretch or interact with the environment. At the same time, it's important for trees to have a strong foundation, or the trunk. And last but not least, all trees have to have roots to feel grounded and centered in the earth and take nourishment from it. So if you place a board underneath a tree, the situation will indeed become quite kunnan, because we've been cut off from any source of nourishment. Since shelter-in and social distancing policies were put in place, many people have been suffering from boredom and isolation, and in the work world, people have lost their work-life boundaries, neglected their physical health, and overindulged in social media. Now, I've been doing workshops on resiliency for a number of years, always influenced by traditional Chinese culture. And this lends itself particularly well to embodiment. It's hard to explain embodiment with words. It has to be practiced and experienced. But basically, it involves getting people out of their identity-driven, repetitive, and negative thought patterns and back into their bodies, their roots. In this webinar, you'll find out what your window of tolerance for stress is. You'll also get a sense of where qi is flowing or not in your body. And together we'll practice some simple breath techniques to raise or lower your energy. So sign up for my free webinar on my website or at the Zoom link below.